This video is going to show how to install a pressure gauge on a 20K Gen 2 Goosebox. Don't use anything more than 1.5 inch diameter dial for that pressure gauge, or you could have clearance issues there. This is the relief valve, and this is where you fill it. You have to push this in for any air to go in, and there doesn't seem to be communication between the airbag. This connects to the airbag. There's no communication between the airbag and this relief valve unless you push this in. If you look in here, you can kind of see that. But I have added a port here for a pressure gauge. The center of this hole is about 0.7 inches from that edge, from this edge, and I drilled down about 1/2 inch and then tapped it with a 1/8 inch pipe tap. So when I drilled this, I drilled the big hole first, for the pipe tap, and then I did a little pilot hole in there second, just to minimize shavings that I got in here, since there is some sort of a O-ring seal in there for when you push this in, it seals, so I didn't want a bunch of shavings in there. This thread right here is a straight thread and has an O-ring seal here. I think it's a 1/4 BSP straight thread. A lot of people have used a 1/4 inch NPT connection, which is a tapered thread. It's got a little different number of threads per inch. I think the BSP is 19 and the pipe thread I think is 18. So it's cross-threading it. People have made it work with enough sealant, and so you can do it that way. But the reason I was chasing this pressure gauge is because my Goosebox was leaking air. Once I started this, I realized why it was probably leaking air. Is this O-ring fitting was barely more than hand tight, so that's probably why I was leaking air. So I would recommend checking how tight is this O-ring connection and the other one on the other end where it connects to the Goosebox. And tighten that if it's loose. It might stop some people's leaks. I was gonna mount it with this back mount gauge and nipple that I already had, but that nipple's a little too short. And it's got some clearance issues here with the mounting bolts. I could rotate that nipple down and have it facing like this. I liked it initially because the gauge would be facing the right orientation. This is the gauge I'm going to use. It's a bottom mount rather than the back mount that I tried initially. It's an 1.5 inch dial, 0 to 100 psi, 1/8 NPT thread. Came with some bushings, but I won't use those since I drilled it 1/8. If you do have leaking issues and you don't want to put in a pressure gauge, try checking the tightness of this. Is no ring fitting. It was pretty much hand tight before when I started this, so that's probably where I was leaking air. But so check the tightness of that one and that one, although that one's a little bit hard to get a wrench on. Could be leaking on that O-ring fitting too. And remember to push this in when you try and add air, or it won't actually add any air. And I think pressure gauge is helpful feature to have, one less thing you got to monkey with before you want to travel. You just take a look at the gauge. This Goosebox is less than a year old, and you see the paint is already flaking off, rusting underneath, so they definitely should prep their steel a little bit before they paint it. It'll last a lot longer. This is the camper I put my Goosebox on. It's XLR Thunderbolt. I'd recommend doing this kind of work when it's warmer though. It's 24 degrees and that brass was really cold. I used a drill bit and a tap that I borrowed from a friend. I didn't cover that in a lot of detail. It's not my expertise, but I didn't use a drill press. I just used a hand drill. Tried to keep it straight and it went pretty well. If this video was helpful at all, please hit the subscribe button and notification bell. Thanks for watching.